The restaurant was packed that evening. Sam, wearing his simple uniform and maintaining his usual calm demeanor, moved back and forth between tables. Despite the rush, he kept a smile on his face, carefully concealing the weight of his worries. His mother was at home, in need of care, and the bills were long overdue. But Sam never let any of that show. Then Parker walked in. His presence always brought a wave of discomfort. He didn't need a reason to be cruel, he did it because he could. Accompanied by two equally arrogant friends, he sat at his usual table and called Sam over with an impatient gesture. "You're late," Parker snapped, pulling his phone out of his pocket. His tone was dripping with disdain, but Sam stayed composed. "Apologies, sir. What can I get for you tonight?" "Surprise me. But make it quick, yeah. I'm in a hurry." Sam walked back to the counter, taking a deep breath. He was familiar with these kinds of provocations. When he returned with the orders, Parker deliberately knocked over a full glass of wine. The deep red liquid spilled across the table, dripped onto the floor, and stained Sam's uniform. "You really are a disaster, aren't you?" Parker laughed loudly, his friends joining in while the other diners avoided eye contact, visibly uncomfortable. Sam crouched down to clean up the mess, carefully picking up the shards of glass. His face burned, but he remained silent. He knew that saying anything would only make things worse. That's when the door opened again. A man entered, moving calmly. His appearance was modest, his clothes unremarkable, but his eyes scanned the room as if seeing beyond the surface. He chose a table near Parker and sat down, quietly observing. Sam was still on the floor, trying to finish cleaning up the wine, but the man continued to watch intently. He saw Parker's loud laughter, the other customers' unease, and Sam, a young man doing everything he could to preserve his dignity. In the next few minutes, this stranger would reveal that he was there for a much greater purpose. And Sam's night would never be the same. The restaurant was thick with tension. Sam tried to stay focused on his tasks, but Parker's loud laughter filled the room like an unpleasant tune no one could ignore. When the door opened again, a man walked in, dressed simply and carrying himself with a calm demeanor. He didn't immediately attract attention, but he chose a table near Parker and took his seat without haste. His eyes slowly swept across the room, lingering for a moment on Sam. At the counter, Sam noticed the man raising his hand and quickly approached him. "Good evening. How can I help you?" he asked, with his usual respectful tone. "Pick something for me." "Something simple," the man replied, offering a warm, reassuring smile. Sam nodded and returned to the counter. As he prepared the order, another burst of Parker's obnoxious laughter rang out, accompanied by exaggerated gestures and jokes with his friends. The sound seemed to fill the entire restaurant, yet no one dared to say a word. When the dish was ready, Sam served it to the customer, who nodded in appreciation. But before taking a bite, the man surprised him with a question. "Do you always get treated like this?" Sam froze for a moment, caught off guard. He took a deep breath before responding with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Sometimes. It's just part of the job." The man was silent for a few moments, as if weighing the answer. Then, he pulled a small notebook from his pocket and began writing. His gaze remained sharp, occasionally darting to Parker, who continued his unnecessary commentary. "More wine over here, kid," Parker shouted, shoving the glass across the table and spilling some of its contents onto the floor. "What are you waiting for? Come on, hurry up." Sam grabbed a cloth and returned to the table, wiping up the spilled wine as Parker laughed again. But this time, Sam felt a subtle shift. He wasn't alone. The mysterious customer was watching every move, as though he could see what no one else dared to notice. The tension in the room grew heavier by the second, the air thick with anticipation. Something was about to happen, and Sam knew this night wouldn't end like the others. Parker's taunts continued relentlessly. As Sam cleaned the floor near the table, Parker made sure to turn every move into the butt of a joke. "That's right, boy. Can't you clean faster?" Parker sneered, leaning forward with a sarcastic grin. Sam stayed silent. He rose slowly, holding the cloth, and for a brief moment, his eyes met those of the mysterious customer. The man was still watching, attentive but not intervening. "Incompetent waiter," Parker added, raising his voice. "Bet nobody else would even hire you." The room fell silent. The laughter stopped, and even Parker's friends avoided eye contact. Sam tried to maintain his composure, but before he could respond, the mysterious customer called for him. "Could you bring some more water, please?" the man said calmly. That simple gesture was enough to pull Sam out of the situation. He walked to the counter, retrieved the bottle, and returned to the man's table. The customer looked at him and said quietly, "You're doing your best. Don't let it get to you." Sam felt a wave of relief and emotion but only nodded before returning to his duties. Realizing that no one was engaging with him anymore, Parker stood abruptly. "This place isn't worth it. Let's go." He stormed out, followed by his friends. The restaurant felt lighter after the door closed. Conversations gradually resumed, and Sam tried to refocus, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the mysterious customer. When he approached the table to deliver the bill, the man scribbled something on a napkin and folded it. "This is for you," the customer said, handing over the napkin along with the check. Sam took the napkin, still puzzled, and watched as the man calmly got up, slipped on his coat, and exited the restaurant. Curious, Sam unfolded the napkin. Inside was a simple note. "You deserve better. Don't give up." And alongside it, a check that could leave anyone breathless. Sam stood frozen, holding the napkin and the check. He blinked slowly, trying to comprehend if what he was seeing was real. The amount written on the check seemed unimaginable for someone like him. The restaurant had grown quieter, but inside Sam, a whirlwind of shock and emotion made his heart race. He glanced around, hoping to catch a glimpse of the mysterious customer, but the man had already disappeared through the door. "Sam, are you okay?" a coworker asked, approaching with a concerned look. "Yeah. I just need a moment," he replied, avoiding her gaze. In the kitchen, leaning against the cold wall, Sam unfolded the napkin once more. The words written there were simple, yet they struck something deep within him: "You deserve better. Don't give up." The events of the day replayed in his mind like flashes: Parker's laughter, the humiliation, the pitying glances, and the burden of keeping calm. But now, something was different. For the first time in a long while, he felt like someone genuinely believed in him. He thought about his mother, waiting for him at home. Every night, she'd tell him, "You work so hard, but I know your life will change. You just need a chance." With a deep breath, Sam returned to the dining area. The night carried on, but inside, he felt something shift. There was hope again, even though he didn't yet know what he would do with it. When the restaurant closed, Sam sat at an empty table, staring at the check. The manager, a firm but fair man, approached and asked, "Everything okay, Sam?" "Yes, I think so," Sam replied, tucking the check into his pocket. In that moment, he knew his life had just changed. He only needed to decide how to use the opportunity. Sam spent the day with his mind swirling with questions. The check was still tucked away in his pocket, a weight he didn't quite know how to bear. At work, he did his best to act normal, but his thoughts were elsewhere. What would he do with that money? It was enough to change his life, yet for someone like Sam, doubt always came before action. During a break, as he was organizing some tables, a memory struck him like lightning: his father's voice, repeating a phrase he often said when life seemed unbearable. "Sammy, you never know when the next blow might be your victory. The important thing is to keep fighting." His father had passed away early, leaving the family without answers or support. Sam didn't talk about it much, but that absence shaped every choice he'd made since. Later, at home, a sense of something greater on the horizon filled him. The soft glow of the lamp illuminated the living room as his mother sat in her rocking chair, reading an old letter she had pulled from the back of a drawer. "Whose letter is that, Mom?" Sam asked, trying to distract himself from his own thoughts. She looked up with a nostalgic smile. "It's from your father. One of the last things he wrote before he passed." Sam felt a pang in his chest. The letter, yellowed with age, looked fragile, but its words still carried weight. He read it in silence while his mother watched, her eyes glistening. "Sammy, life will test you, and many times you'll feel like you're alone. But know that no matter what happens, I see strength in you. Don't give up on who you can become." Sam carefully folded the letter and placed it back in the drawer. Those words were both a comfort and a challenge. The next morning, as Sam walked to work, something unexpected happened. A black car pulled up beside him. The window rolled down slowly, revealing a man in an impeccable suit with a serious expression. "You're Sam, right?" Sam stopped, confused. "Yeah, that's me. Who's asking?" The man extended a business card. "Nathaniel. I'm an assistant to someone who was at the restaurant where you work. He asked me to find you." Sam hesitated but took the card. The name of the mysterious customer was there, along with an address. His heart raced. "He wants to meet with you. But there's no pressure, you can decide when you're ready," Nathaniel added before rolling up the window and driving off, leaving Sam standing on the sidewalk, clutching the card like it was the key to something far bigger than he could imagine. Sam held the card between his fingers. The previous day had been a whirlwind of emotions. The check was still in his pocket, but the weight of deciding what to do with it seemed heavier by the minute. He couldn't ignore the message on the napkin or the generosity of someone who believed in him. At the restaurant during his shift, Sam struggled to focus. The anticipation of the meeting consumed him. When the clock struck 10 p.m. and the lights began to dim, he finally took a deep breath. Tomorrow would be a turning point. The next morning, Sam put on his best outfit. He stared at himself in the mirror, a mix of anxiety and determination in his eyes. "If he believes in me, maybe I should believe in myself too," he thought. He took the bus and stepped off in a neighborhood completely unlike anything he'd ever known. The building listed on the card was imposing, its mirrored windows reflecting the sky. Sam hesitated at the entrance, but the receptionist greeted him warmly. "Right this way, please." The room he was led to was spacious, with large windows offering an impressive view of the city. In the center, Elliot was waiting. The man who had changed Sam's night at the restaurant now seemed even more confident in this environment. "Sam, I'm glad you came. Please, have a seat." Sam sat down slowly, unsure of what to expect but ready to listen. "You're probably wondering why I did this," Elliot began, getting straight to the point. "And I want to explain." Elliot shared that he had grown up in similar circumstances. Working from a young age, he knew what it felt like to carry responsibilities that seemed too heavy. But one day, someone had seen his potential and given him a chance. "That check you received isn't just money, Sam. It's a vote of confidence. It's the same opportunity one was given, and it changed my life." Sam listened intently, still grappling with his confusion. "But why me? Why not someone else?" Elliot smiled. "Because I saw how you handled the humiliation that night. I saw someone who knows the value of hard work but also deserves more. And I want to be that opportunity for you, just like someone was for me." The silence in the room was almost tangible. Sam felt the weight of Elliot's words, but also fear. He wasn't sure if he could live up to this trust. "I don't know if I can do it," he finally said. "I know you can," Elliot replied firmly. "You already started to change your life the moment you decided to take this step. What you do now is the next step." Elliot opened a folder and laid out ideas for courses, small businesses, and investments that could help Sam get started. The money is yours to decide how to use, but I want to guide you. I want you to see what's possible. Sam looked at the options and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. For the first time, it wasn't just about surviving. It was about building something bigger. As Sam left the building, the warmth of the sun hit his face. For the first time in a long time, the city didn't feel like a distant, unreachable place. It felt like a place full of possibilities. When Sam returned home that evening, the city felt different. The streets, once oppressive, seemed less intimidating, as though each street lamp was a reminder that possibilities were finally within reach. But as he opened the door to his small apartment, reality brought him back to earth. His mother was in the living room, calmly folding clothes. The familiar scent of tea filled the air, mingling with the low hum of the evening news on the TV. She looked up and smiled at him, though the fatigue in her eyes was unmistakable. "You're late today, son. Is everything all right?" "Yes, Mom. Everything's fine," Sam replied, hesitating before sitting next to her. He knew he needed to talk about the check and Elliot's words, but he couldn't yet find the right way to start. As she continued folding clothes, Sam replayed Elliot's advice in his head: think about what you want to build. But what did he want to build? His life up until now had been about survival. Bigger aspirations felt like a luxury he couldn't afford. "Sam, you seem distracted," his mother said, breaking his train of thought. "What's going on?" He took a deep breath, placing his hands on his knees. "I met someone. Someone who believes I can do more than just work at the restaurant. He gave me a chance, Mom. A check to pay off the debts, take care of you, and try something different." Her expression shifted from surprise to concern. "And who is this man? Why would he do that?" "I asked him the same thing. He said someone once did the same for him. He believes people who don't give up deserve a chance." She was silent for a long moment, as if weighing his words. Finally, she placed her hand over his. "Do you know you deserve this? Even before anyone said it, I always knew you could do more." Sam felt a sting in his eyes but held back the tears. He knew she was sincere, but believing in himself was a habit he had yet to learn. The next morning, over breakfast, Sam decided he'd start by paying off the debts. It was a simple but significant first step. He left with the stack of overdue bills in hand and headed to the various offices across the city. The act of settling each debt brought mixed feelings. On one hand, there was immense relief as he collected receipts of clearance. On the other, he realized how these debts had consumed years of his life. When he returned home, a package was waiting for him. The sender's name, Elliot, was neatly printed on the label. Sam opened it carefully and found a book, accompanied by a letter. "Sam. The first step toward any change begins with learning. This book helped me understand that knowledge is the foundation for building something lasting. Read it. And remember, there's no rush, but don't waste time. I'm here when you're ready for the next step. Elliot." Sam held the book for a moment, examining its simple cover. Elliot's words resonated like a call he couldn't ignore. That evening, Sam began reading the first few pages. The book spoke about choices and how they shape the future. One highlighted phrase struck him deeply. "The difference between where you are and where you want to be lies in what you do with the time you have now." The words felt like they were meant just for him. For a moment, Sam looked around his small apartment. He saw the living room, the cramped kitchen, and the wear of time on the furniture. Everything carried stories, but it also seemed to ask for a fresh start. Closing the book carefully, Sam stood up. For the first time in years, he felt a genuine desire to plan for something bigger. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, difficult didn't seem impossible. The morning dawned quietly, as if the world itself was waiting for Sam to take his next step. Paying off the debts had brought him a strange sense of freedom, coupled with the uncertainty of what to do next. As he brewed coffee, he flipped through the book Elliot had sent. Every page seemed tailored for him, filled with lessons about resilience, choices, and the power of believing in oneself. One phrase stood out that morning: life rewards those who have the courage to act. Sam closed the book gently, knowing he had made progress but feeling far from anything tangible. It was as if he had been handed the right tools but wasn't sure how to start using them. While cleaning the house, he stumbled upon an old notebook. Its pages were filled with notes he had written years ago when he dreamt of opening a small cafe. Back then, Sam worked as a kitchen assistant in a modest restaurant. He had jotted down recipes, decor ideas, and even potential names for the business. But as life's responsibilities grew heavier, those dreams were forgotten. Sam ran his fingers over the yellowed pages, reading his own words as if they belonged to someone else. It was hard to believe he had once let that flame die out. That afternoon, as he revisited the book, a knock at the door interrupted him. Opening it, he found Henry, his childhood friend who worked as a construction worker. "Sam. Just stopped by to see how you're doing. You've been off the radar," Henry said with a wide grin. "I'm good, just thinking about some things," Sam replied, stepping aside to let him in. Henry noticed the book on the table and the notebook in Sam's hands. "What's this? Work or some new idea?" Sam gave a sheepish smile. "Just old stuff. Ideas I had a long time ago. Probably useless now." Henry sat on the couch and took the notebook from Sam's hands, flipping through its pages. After a few minutes, he said, "You know, this doesn't look as silly as you think. Actually, I'd say it's pretty in line with what I know about you. You've always been good at creating things, Sam. Why not give it a shot?" Henry's words hit Sam like a soft but powerful punch. He stayed quiet, but inside, something stirred. Later that evening, Sam decided to call Elliot. Hearing Elliot's calm voice on the other end of the line, he knew he had made the right choice. "Elliot, it's Sam. I'd like to talk about the next step." "Glad to hear it," Elliot replied. "Come by my office tomorrow, same time." The next morning, Sam arrived at Elliot's building, clutching the old notebook. When he entered the office, Elliot greeted him with a smile. "I see you've brought something interesting," Elliot said, nodding toward the notebook. Sam took a deep breath before explaining. He talked about his dream of opening a cafe, how the notebook reflected a time when he believed in himself more. He shared the recipes and ideas he had jotted down, trying to hide his nerves. When he finished, Elliot was silent for a few moments, flipping through the notebook. Finally, he looked up at Sam and said, "This is a great start. And do you know why? Because you already have a vision. Now all we need is a plan." Sam felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time, it didn't feel like he was facing this journey alone. Elliot outlined how they could structure the cafe, from securing initial funding to choosing a location. He also suggested Sam take quick courses to refine his skills, pointing out affordable options. "I'll help you, Sam, but I want you to understand this is your project. The trust one have in you only makes sense if you trust yourself too." As Sam left the building, he held the notebook with a renewed sense of purpose. He knew the road ahead would be full of challenges, but this time, he was determined not to back down. The days following Sam's meeting with Elliot were intense. Each page of the rediscovered notebook seemed to take on new meaning, as if the once distant ideas scribbled within it had come back to life. But now, instead of unattainable dreams, they felt like real plans, ready to be turned into something concrete. Sam spent his mornings working at the restaurant and his evenings studying. At Elliot's suggestion, he had signed up for a short online course on small business management, set to start in a few weeks. Even after long, exhausting days, he sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by notes and readings. His mother, seeing him so focused, smiled discreetly. I haven't seen you like this since you were a kid, Sam. You always had a notebook in your hands, always creating something. It's good to see that spark again." He looked up at her and, for a moment, felt a profound sense of gratitude. Everything he was doing was for her too. But above all, something inside him was finally changing. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was building. One day, upon arriving at the restaurant, the manager called him aside for a chat. "Sam, I've been watching you these past few days. You seem different, more focused. Is everything all right?" "Yes, everything's fine," Sam replied, his smile more genuine than it had been in a long time. "I'm glad to hear that. You've always been one of our best here. If you ever need anything, you know where to find me." Sam thanked him. His job at the restaurant was important, but for the first time, he could picture a future beyond it. The following week, Elliot called to arrange another meeting. This time, Sam felt more confident. He brought his notebook with new pages filled, ideas for menus, initial costs, and even sketches of a logo he had drawn during a particularly inspired late night. "You're on the right track," Elliot said, flipping through the notebook. "But the most important thing is location. A cafe needs a space that tells its story, Sam. Somewhere accessible, but also uniquely yours." Elliot suggested they tour different parts of the city together. As they walked through various neighborhoods, every street and storefront seemed like a possibility. Finally, on a sunny afternoon, Sam spotted a small corner shop in a quiet neighborhood, with large windows and a welcoming porch. "This is it," he said, almost without thinking. Elliot smiled. "When it feels right, it's because it is." The days that followed were filled with meetings with the property owner, adjustments to financial plans, and discussions with Elliot about structuring the business. Each step was a challenge, but also a triumph. Late one night, Sam sat at his kitchen table, his notebook open and papers spread out around him. His mother came into the room and placed a cup of tea beside him. "You've come so far, my son. I always knew this was inside you." Sam smiled and held her hand for a moment. "There's still a long way to go, Mom. But this time, I feel like I can do it." The next morning, Sam returned to the shop to finalize the lease. Signing the contract gave him butterflies, but it also brought a courage he didn't know he had. He thanked the landlord and walked out of the shop with the keys in hand. Sam stood there for a moment, looking at the storefront that was now his cafe. He knew the real work was just beginning, but for the first time, he felt certain he was on the right path. The grand opening of Sam's Cafe was scheduled for a sunny Saturday. The past weeks had been a whirlwind, balancing his restaurant shifts, finalizing details for the cafe, and nights of studying business management. Every detail of the cafe felt like a piece of him, the recipes resurrected from his old notebook, the simple yet welcoming decor, and even the name he chose for the space, New Beginnings Cafe. That morning, Sam stood outside the shop, hands in his pockets, gazing at the storefront. The large windows reflected the blue sky, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. His mother stood beside him, holding his arm. "You did it, my son," she said, tears in her eyes. "Not alone," Sam replied with a sincere smile. The first customers arrived early, and Sam made a point to greet each of them personally. Henry was the first through the door, accompanied by his family. "I told you you could do it," Henry joked, taking in the space. Shortly after, Elliot arrived. Dressed as simply as ever, he carried a subtle smile of approval. Sam greeted him with a firm handshake, but neither of them needed to say much. As the morning wore on, the cafe filled up. Tables were occupied, conversations hummed, and laughter echoed through the space. The atmosphere felt alive, as if every little detail had found its purpose. The most unexpected moment came in the afternoon. Sam was behind the counter when a familiar face walked through the door. He froze for a moment, recognizing Parker, the customer who had humiliated him months earlier. Parker looked different. He was alone, missing the arrogant air he once carried. He approached the counter and stopped, looking at Sam. "Sam," Parker said after a moment of awkward silence. I don't know if you remember me." "I remember," Sam replied calmly. Parker took a deep breath. "I want to apologize. The way I treated you that day was unacceptable. I've thought a lot about it since. Seeing you here, with all of this, it's inspiring. You deserve all of it, and more." For a moment, Sam didn't know what to say. He could feel the sincerity in Parker's words, and instead of resentment, he felt relief. "Thank you," Sam finally said. "And, everyone deserves a chance to start over, right?" Parker gave a faint smile and placed a simple order, a black coffee. As he sat at one of the tables, Sam realized something. The true success of the cafe wasn't just in what he had built, but in the lives he touched along the way. At the end of the day, after the last table was cleared and the lights dimmed, Sam sat alone in the quiet cafe. He took a seat near the window and looked around the space, now an extension of his story. Elliot had given him an opportunity, but the choice to make something of it had been entirely his. He thought of his mother, his greatest motivation, of Henry, who helped him believe in himself, and even of Parker, whose changed attitude proved that everyone is capable of growth. With the faint glow of the cafe's sign lighting his face, Sam whispered to himself, "New beginnings are for everyone. All it takes is the first step." If you want to see more inspiring stories like this one, comment, "I want," and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing. Watch another moving story now.